Well, DNI Ratcliffe gave us some really good information Sunday morning, and I'm going to talk on that. And then also, I've got a Rasmussen poll that I think you're going to want to see. And I've got information on the Grace Community Church in California being evicted. Yeah, so stick with me, folks, and I'll get to it in a minute. Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and wow, this was an awesome interview. It's 20 minutes long, so obviously I can't play it all, but I do want to play just a few clips for you because this was an incredible interview that gave us so much information. And this is the benefit of having Ratcliffe in there because, he was a congressman. He's going to do all he can to get us the information that he can legally give us. And so this is just a great interview here. So here we go on this one.
So a lot of conversation about you and your latest moves. Let's talk about that. You gave a briefing to all of Congress on July 31st. The very next day, we all saw headlines about Russia meddling in our economy, which has been the case for several decades. Tell us why you're making this change to change the way you brief Congress on security matters.
Sure. Well, Maria, when I went through confirmation, people watched that. They heard me make a couple of promises. One of them was to always follow the law. The other was that I would do everything I could to protect the unauthorized disclosure of classified information, allowing people to leak it for political purposes. The action that I announced yesterday is entirely consistent with that. I reiterated to Congress, look, I'm going to keep you fully and currently informed as required by the law, but I also said we're not going to do a repeat of what happened a month ago when I did more than what was required at the request of Congress to brief not just the oversight committees, but every member of Congress. When I did that, Maria, I said, my only condition is that you treat this information with the respect that it deserves and you keep it private. And yet within minutes of that, one of those briefings ending, a number of members of Congress went to a number of different publications and leaked classified information, again, for political purposes, to create a narrative that simply isn't true, that somehow Russia is a greater national security threat than China. So I'm going to continue to keep the promises that I made. I'm going to continue to follow the law. I'm going to continue to keep Congress informed. But we've had a pandemic of information being leaked out of the intelligence community, and I'm going to take the measures to make sure that that stops.
I think he did a great job answering that because he's right. And the thing is about this particular interview is they kind of revisited this topic later on. And so don't, necessarily take that as his final answer because he does talk more later on about the leak situation and possible indictments for the leaking. So I'm ready for that, aren't you? I just can't believe that people in Congress are sitting there in a security briefing and then they turn right around and they go out and they leak classified information. It's just really, we trust you to keep classified information quiet. I mean, that's why it's classified, but that's not what they're doing. So, it is illegal for them to do that. So I do hope there will be some charges for that. Anyway, so that was the first clip I wanted to show you. And then just a reminder that he has seen all the documents. I mean, there's only one person who's probably maybe seen more, and that would be the president. I mean, he gets to see it all, and he knows. And that's the thing with Richard Grenell, too, because he saw everything, and both of them are just appalled at what went on. You can tell from what they say, their comments and everything. So what exactly happened? We're going to find out because they're not going to rest until we understand it all.
So there was a leak a day. Talk to us why this is so important for the public to understand, because we know that you've been on this program a lot during the investigation into Russia, and Adam Schiff was out there saying that there was collusion in plain sight. it fits his narrative to continue pushing this Russia narrative. But did they miss the true adversary, which is China?
Right. Well, again, Maria, as you said at the top of the show, in this position, I'm privileged to see more intelligence than anyone else in the country other than the president. That includes all members of Congress. And as I see intelligence every single day, when you consider the fact that the amount of intelligence that we get, and we consider economically, militarily, technologically, China is the greatest threat that we face. I don't mean to minimize Russia. They are a serious national security threat, but day in, day out, the threats that we face from China are significantly greater. And I think that's clear, and anyone that sees intelligence knows that, and anyone who says otherwise is just politicizing intelligence for their own narrative.
Okay, by the way, those background noises, that's Maria. That's not me. Okay, it's pretty quiet here. Even the cats are quiet right now. So I wanted to point that out to you because he has seen it, and a lot of people in Congress haven't. Now remember that they do share things with the Gang of Eight, and that's probably who he's talking about when they're discussing how he will continue to brief the people he needs to, because that's what the law says he has to do. The problem we have right now is that Adam Schiff is one of the Gang of Eight. And so, yes, we're going to get leaks from there. But it does narrow it down, and it makes it a little easier to prosecute when you have only 8 people that are possibly leaking. It's got to be one of the 8, and it should be pretty easy to track down, I hope, because it is illegal to do this. Anyway, so I wanted to share that one with you, but I think what people need to understand is that, there's this Russia, Russia, Russia narrative out there. What we really need to be focused on, especially for this election, is China. And he's going to tell you a couple things. I've got a couple clips here about China and their influence campaign. And I think this is really important when we're talking about how things may work for this particular election. So here we go.
This week, we saw Chinese state media backing Biden for president, calling him, quote unquote, smoother, more reasonable to deal with than President Trump. Tell me about that. What can you tell us about China and what they're trying to do in this election?
Well, in an unclassified setting, I can't get into a whole lot of details other than to say that China's using a massive and sophisticated influence campaign that dwarfs anything that any other country is doing. Listen, first, when we talk about election security, I want to reassure the American people it'd be difficult for anyone, China, Russia, or Iran, to change actual vote tallies. We have a decentralized system across this country about counting votes. But when we talk about influence and malign foreign influence, what China's doing that no one else is doing is they're engaging at the local, state, and federal level. Beijing is threatening economic ruin in, for instance, districts where members of Congress are, threatening ruin to businesses, factories, and jobs unless members of Congress support pro-China policies or oppose policies of the administration, of this administration, that are tough on China. So that's the kind of influence, malign influence that China is exerting on a level that no other country is matching, and it's something that should concern every American.
I totally agree with him. It is something that should concern every American, and as he was saying that, as I was listening to it the first time, I was like, wow, everybody needs to know this. This is incredible. This is how they're going to influence our election. It's not through Facebook ads. It's not through bots on Twitter. Well, they may be using those techniques, but what they're really doing is they're using the influence they now have, the financial and economic influence that they have created. Do you remember back during the pandemic, when it was really at its height, do you remember Smithfield, the pork producing plant? It's like the biggest pork producing plant in the United States. and they had some people that got sick, and they had to close the plant. And do you remember that that was China owned? Okay, so what happens if they say, we're just going to close this plant? How many businesses does China own in the United States? That's a really scary prospect. They've purchased so many businesses and so much land here in the United States that if they decide to withdraw from the United States economically, for some of these locations, it's going to be devastating. And that's how they can use their leverage to influence the different policies that are going to be implemented in these localities. I mean, it's devious, but that's what it is. That's the plan. Kind of scary, isn't it? Well, I have one more just to kind of drive this home.
Yeah, let me get your take, really, on China in terms of the influencing campaign there that is underway. We know that there's a massive espionage campaign in terms of mining data from America and having perhaps the opportunity to blackmail people. How are they influencing federal and state and local representatives? Can you tell us about that?
Well, as much as I can tell you is that, you know, what China is again doing at the local, state, federal level is engaging, and they attempt to lobby business leaders, elected officials, members of Congress, and to influence them. They try to do that overtly, but where they're not successful there, then they covertly coerce, intimidate, bully. They use middlemen and proxies to try and influence and ultimately blackmail in some cases or extort elected officials, business leaders, and others to support pro-China policies. And again, this is systematic and on a scale that no other country is doing. And so when we talk about malign foreign influence, multiple countries are engaged, but no one at the level that China is.
See, I'm telling you, that right there should chill every American. I mean, it's scary stuff, really, when you talk about it. So I wanted to share that with you. Now, at the very end, they do get into the Durham thing. And one of the reasons that he says he can't declassify everything that people need is because some of it's being used with Durham's investigation. Haven't I been saying that? Yeah, so he just confirmed it. But again, I knew that was what was happening. So just because they're not having access to different files doesn't mean that nothing's happening and they're hiding those files. It could mean that those files are being used for grand jury evidence. So that's what we hope. And again, he reinforces that, yes, they have, as Congress, they put in a lot of recommendations for criminal investigations because they knew these people were breaking law and they have evidence. So they've submitted that to the DOJ. The DOJ is currently working on the cases necessary. Now, I know you guys are like me, that you're getting very impatient and it's like you just want it to be all over. But we do have the rule of law here, and everyone gets a chance at defending themselves in a court case, if they so choose. So if this is what's going on and the indictments are there, which we know for Kevin Clinesmith it sure was, and we suspect for a lot of the others that there are similar things in the works, and plea deals being drawn up. It just takes time. It takes time to build cases. You don't do it overnight. And we need to make sure that these cases are sound, that there are no loopholes in them, because we don't want any of these people getting away from what they've done. So we need to remember that patience is so hard. But I really believe that we're going to see some things happen, more than just Clinesmith. And we're going to see a lot of things happen before the election. Because, it's not quite September yet, although it's almost there. So let's go on. I'm going to leave the link to this down below. I highly recommend you watch the whole thing. It's 20 minutes long, really worth it. Oh, and by the way, I had a whole lot of fun with you guys in the premiere chat the other night. I'm going to do another premiere on Friday night of this coming week, the week that we're just starting here. And I will do that at 9 o'clock, same time, 9 o'clock Eastern, just like this last one. But I have a really interesting surprise for you guys. Anyway, let's go on. Here's a Rasmussen report you've got to see, because they made a prediction. As with the end of the yellow journalism era, there will be a rebirth of trusted media outlets once again in America. This rebirth will be led by today's new media outliers and dissidents who practice traditional fact-based reporting. They already are on the rise. Yes, they are. I was just thinking about that the other day, and I thought, OAN, Just the News, and there's another one that's going to be WGN, which is a station out of Chicago that's going to be having a News Now or News America. I can't remember what it was called, but they're going to have a news only, and it said no opinion. So that's going to be interesting to see. But anyway, I wanted to show you this because, like I said, Rasmussen reports. Okay, so they did a national survey of 1,000 U.S. likely voters conducted July 15th to 16th of 2020. And here's the one question they had. How do you get most of your political news? TV, radio, internet, newspaper, social media, family and friends, or from other sources? And here's the breakdown of it. We had 44% TV, 8% radio, 29% internet, 6% newspaper, 6% social media, 2% family and friends, 3% from other sources, and 2% not sure. So, kind of interesting on this. It's starting to turn, and a lot more people are getting their information from the internet. And with the TV, of course, they didn't delineate which stations there, but that would be interesting to see what the breakdown is on that. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? As places like the New York Times and other once great journalistic institutions betray their standards and lose sight of their principles, Americans still hunger for news that is accurate, opinions that are vital, and debate that is sincere. 58% agree. Only 24% disagree, 17 not sure. 17, huh? Anyway, then it goes down. Number 3, do most major news organizations in this country have their own political agenda, or do they generally remain impartial? 63% said they have their own political agenda. Only 27% said they generally remain impartial, and 10% said not sure. So I think that is very telling. Times have changed. When I was growing up, a long time ago, the TV had 3 stations. That's it. I mean, we had ABC, CBS, and NBC. That's all we had. There was nothing else. So that's what you had to watch. And as I, grew up, of course, there's been a lot more added to that. And so we have so many choices now that these mainstream media outlets are worried, and they should be, because they're losing viewers all the time, because we have a lot more access to other sources so we can compare them. You see, back in the 1960s, if you had some kind of news report come out and ABC, NBC, and CBS all said the same thing on the news report, how would you know that maybe what they were saying, even though all 3 of them agreed, wasn't accurate? Well, you wouldn't know back then. But now we do have ways of finding out. And that's what scares them, and that's what's going to trip them up. Now, this is what I thought was really interesting, because the Jim Lehrer's rules of journalism. Oh, if they only adhered to this. I practice journalism in accordance with the following guidelines. Do nothing I cannot defend. Do not distort, lie, slant, or hype. Do not falsify facts or make up quotes. Cover, write, and present every story with the care I would want if the story were about me. Assume there is at least one other side or version to every story. That's what ticks me off. I mean, really. Every time you hear a story, there's always two sides, at least two sides. And you should never rush in and make a judgment until you've heard from both sides. Really. So you got to be really careful about that. Assume the viewer is as smart and caring and good a person as I am. Yeah, well, they don't think very highly of us, the MSM. Yeah, they don't think we're very smart, that's for sure. Assume the same about all people on whom I report. Assume everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Boy, that doesn't happen, does it? Assume personal lives are private matter until a legitimate turn in the story mandates otherwise. Yeah. I mean, if these were followed, wow, what a difference it would make. Carefully separate opinion and analysis from straight news stories and clearly label it as such. Wow, that right there would be really nice. Now see, I do opinion and analysis, guys. I try to get news out to you, but the news is always going to be filtered through my opinion. So I hope you understand that. I think most of you do, because I do respect my audience, and I believe that my audience is intelligent. So, I think they're good people. Anyway, then it goes on and says, do not use anonymous sources or blind quotes except on rare and monumental occasions. No one should ever be allowed to attack another anonymously. Boy, isn't that true? Do not broadcast profanity or the end result of violence unless it is an integral and necessary part of the story and or crucial to its understanding. Yeah, that's with me. You can report on things without having to resort to either of those. Acknowledge that objectivity may be impossible, but fairness never is. And this is something that, a lot of people that watch Fox News understand that, yes, it has a conservative bias. Okay, I'm willing to admit that. When I talk about things, I have a conservative bias, very strongly so. I understand that. But I have a lot of liberal friends that you can't get them to admit that they have a bias. They think we all have biases, but they don't. And their news isn't biased at all. See, that's the problem. We can look at it that way, but they can't. And that's really an issue that we have, because you got to understand, everybody looks at things through their own worldview, and that colors how they perceive what they're seeing. So then it goes on and says, journalists who are reckless with facts and reputations should be disciplined by their employers. For sure. My viewers have a right to know what principles guide my work and the process I use in their practice. I think that is so true. That's why if you go look at the About Me on my channel page, you understand that I say I come from a conservative Christian perspective. So that's who I am. That's how I filter things, because that's my worldview. And then the last one, I am not in the entertainment business. I think so many of those in the news these days have forgotten that. And a lot of them, it's just really bizarre to me that a lot of them have actor bios on the International Movie Database. Just really crazy. So I wanted to share that with you. And then let's go on. I have a lot of headlines to share with you on this. So RoboCop is here. New smart police helmet scans for COVID-19 and uses facial recognition. Check this out. Yep. If you're like going into an airport, you have a smart helmet and it can screen airport passengers for the COVID-19 virus, as well as provide the scanning officer with other vital records. And public officials in Flint, Michigan cannot provide clean drinking water to their residents, but travelers to Bishop International Airport can get a glimpse of the new robotic cop helmets where they're currently deployed. Under the guise of screening passengers for COVID-19, the smart helmet produced by KeyBiz, based in Italy, can scan travelers' body temperatures from over 20 feet away. But The smart helmet is not limited to temperature body scans, which any laser-guided thermometer can do, not in the slightest. Facial recognition software is installed, which can provide the police officer with information related to outstanding warrants. If an individual is identified on the T-Watch list or a no-fly list and can read license plates for outstanding warrants, stolen vehicle information, criminal histories, etc. Even if you are completely innocent, you will be subject to these scans. Not invasive at all, huh? Very interesting. There's more to the article. I highly recommend you read that. It's here. So, another one. I don't know if you've heard about this by now. You might have. But this Portland's mayor, Wheeler, he is something else. And so he says, basically, he wrote President Trump a letter. And he says he doesn't need any help. He's doing just fine without all those feds interfering. And the problem is, though, this violence has been going on for, I think, what'd they say, 90-some days? I mean, it's been going on for a long time. Now, if I were President Trump, so President Trump, if you're listening, here's my recommendation. Like it matters. But my recommendation is set a time limit. Say, you know what? You got 3 days. If you think you can clean up this town and you can stop the violence, do it in 3 days. And if you don't get it done in 3 days, I'm coming in. Because this has gone on long enough. But of course, you know, Wheeler he is definitely suffering from Trump derangement syndrome. And he says that Trump creates hate and division in the country. And he tells him that this is all his fault. And he sent this letter. Here's the letter. It's just basically telling him, hands off. We don't need your stinking help. I mean, that's really what he says. So, and when you sent the feds to Portland last month, you made the situation far worse. So, stay away, please. That's literally what he says. So what is going on in Portland is evidently okay with this guy. Well, Trump, of course, our president, he responded and the mayor was upset. And so the mayor gave a little press conference here that said this.
He has an opportunity to uplift us and bring us together and help us move through this difficult situation in our nation's history, and instead he chooses to play petty politics and divide us. That's my reaction. So I'm going to do the work that I need to do here in my local community with my local officials to take accountability for what's happening on our streets, and I'd appreciate that either the president support us or he stay the hell out of the way.
And just to follow up, what you appear to be saying was that...
Yeah. So that's his response. What I don't get is they're saying that President Trump is being divisive. How is this being divisive? Saying, y'all need to protect your citizens. These people voted for them. Isn't that like one of the main responsibilities they have is to care for their citizens? So I don't understand the position they're coming from. This has been going on for such a long time. Well, okay, I do understand the position they're coming from. To most Americans, they see this as, why in the world wouldn't you want help? If you obviously haven't cleaned it up by now, then you need help. Why wouldn't you take what President Trump has offered you? But, oh no, we don't want to do that. We want to let it go on, because then we can blame Trump for it. And that's exactly what he's doing. And that's what that letter was. Complaining about that. They've been blaming rioting and violent protests on the president. Yeah, that was going on. Well, speaking of tea talk, yeah. So we have this Chris Murphy. He is a U.S. Senator from Connecticut. And he says, can we take the gloves off and tell the truth? Trump is deliberately killing people. He holds rallies where people get infected. On Thursday, no social distancing or masks, sending a clear message that the CDC should be ignored. His plan is to kill people. Let's just say it. Can you believe that? I mean, really, that's what they're trying to say. Well, if you noticed, at the same time this was happening, when they were having President Trump's speech. Over on the mall in Washington, D.C., they had, 150,000 people that were protesting. And they were not social distancing, and a whole bunch of them I saw in the photos were not wearing masks. So that was okay because they were protesting. And you know that COVID virus just does not infect people who are protesting. As long as you're protesting, you will never get the virus. Sorry, that's just what they're saying. Anyway, so this guy takes it a step further. This is really accusing our president of a crime. And then down here, this guy takes it a step further and says, I hope you will work to ensure that no federal government resources are squandered on state honors for Trump when the time comes. Can you believe that? So Richard Grenell responds, this is the kind of crazy that Chris Murphy has inspired by his tea talk. Yep. That's it. So, kind of interesting on that one. So, this came out. It was actually based on a tweet that someone did, and then President Trump retweeted it. But I need you to not get so caught up in this, okay? The shock report and the way it's stated leads to a false impression. Okay, be careful, folks. Because the truth is, yes, the CDC did update their numbers, and what they said is that now they've kind of separated them, and they know that about 9,210 Americans died from COVID alone. Okay? Now, that doesn't mean that the only COVID deaths were 9,210. All right, be careful about that because I think it is very misleading if people don't read the whole thing. The rest did have other illnesses, and this is the thing. This, I think, I'm sorry, I really like the Gateway Pundit, but in this case, I think they're giving it an inaccurate slant. They're misleading people with what they're saying. That's my opinion. So, the thing is, when the reports come out, and this happened in Italy too, and I saw it early on, Italy put out, imagine like a pie chart, and I'm sorry, I can't find the pie chart that I originally used with that, but Italy put out a pie chart where it had 48% of the people who died in Italy had 3 or more comorbidities. That means that the likelihood that it was COVID that really killed them off goes way down because they did have 3 other things that were very dangerous that could likely have really caused the death. Okay? Then they had another large percent that were people with 2 comorbidities. And then they had a third percentage that were the ones with 1 comorbidity. The actual number of people who just died solely with COVID and none of those other factors was very, very small. And I don't remember what it was in Italy. I thought it was like 8% or something like that. But here in the United States, it was 6%. All right? But that doesn't mean that, it could just be somebody was obese and they died from COVID. So that's a legitimate thing. You really can't say that only 9,000 people then died from COVID. That's just not accurate. And I don't want you to be misled because I'm not blaming them here. I just think that they probably jumped on it a little bit and, to try and make a point. So just be careful. Those kinds of things are out there. And we do know that the numbers that they had originally were very overblown and that really only 6% died only by COVID. So again, I'm not saying only 6% died. I'm saying only 6% died and the only thing they had was COVID. The others were the ones that passed away because they had other factors and created a more dangerous situation for them. So that's what I want you to really be careful. Here was the post that she put out. And yes, she is right about this, that there were other people, and so a lot of them were over 70, I think it was. I don't remember, but 90% in nursing homes. And so, it is something that we need to take into consideration, but it still was a dangerous illness that did kill a lot of people. We do know that. It's just when you look at the statistic of only having COVID, it was only 6%. And this was a comment that Dinesh D'Souza made from it. When I first saw the revised CDC figure, which listed fewer than 10,000 American deaths from coronavirus alone, I could hardly believe it. Could our health establishment be complicit in such a national, indeed global deception? President Trump must get to the bottom of this. I do think he needs to get to the bottom of this, okay? I don't have any question about that. But again, 10,000 is not really the total picture. More people did die. It's just that they had comorbidities. So, they may have had asthma. They may have had, COPD or something like that. So they could have had something else. But yes, the number of elderly who passed away, I think most of them were over 70. And so the number under 70 is just astonishingly rare when you look at the statistics. So, there's some others down here that talk about it. And this one right here thought was interesting. Meanwhile, I'm paying into a school system that demands masks and forces my athlete children to don masks in 94-degree weather, practice 4 times a week, and games enough. Can we talk about the mental and physical health consequences to our children? I think that's a legitimate thing. And then this guy says, people's lives and livelihoods have been ruined, cities decimated, entire population of elderly frightened. This falls at the feet of Dr. Fauci and his organization. Corruption. Never let a crisis go to waste. And I agree with him on that. I think that the numbers were manipulated enough to scare people, to keep people in a constant state of fear. And, I just think that's so wrong. This is a little announcement here that I want you to take note of. I will not be linking to this down below, but there's the URL for it, so you can copy that down and use that for more information. But what we're going to be doing is getting the word out to get people to go vote, because I think it's really important that we encourage people to not just talk about the situation, the political situation around us, but to do something. No vote by mail, and to get out and vote in person. That's what they're going to be encouraging people to do. So we need help. We need everybody trying to encourage others to do that. I thought this was interesting. 6 Democrat mayors in Minnesota endorsed Trump, say Biden did nothing for the working class. I know 6 mayors in the entire state of Minnesota is not a lot, but that does say something. So there are 6 towns that have just said, nope, Joe Biden's moved too far to the left. We're not doing that. So it's just a sign of the times. I think it's happening everywhere. I got several of the zero hedge tonight. The Cloward-Piven Strategy to Destroy America. We've talked about this before, and if you don't know what it is, I'm just going to leave this article because it does go through and explain it really well. But essentially, it was a way of overloading the system with necessities and crises to be able to kind of crash it so they could rebuild in whatever way they wanted, like, the transmutation of America into a full-fledged centralized welfare state. Because you see, if it's a welfare state, then people need the government. And if they need the government rules. So that's kind of what it is. All right, I wanted to point this out to you because I talked about this in a previous video, and I want to make sure you understand what's going on, because the ruling of the judge was that Grace Community Church could continue to have their services. Now, this is John MacArthur's church, so it's not a small church. It is a pretty large church. It's one of the mega churches out there. the judge actually said that yes, they could continue. So what does the LA County do? They lost the court battle, so they turn around and they evict the church. Now, technically, they're not evicting the church from the church facilities because the church owns those, but from a parking lot. So they can't use the parking lot anymore. And it's just so crazy. They've been using it for like 40 years, and all these other places, liquor stores, department stores, they can all be open. But hey, don't you go to church. That's not right. You can't do that. So yes, that's what they did. And it really is a county-owned parking lot that they have been renting for quite a sum, actually. Here's the agreement and the eviction notice. So here's the eviction notice, and they have to vacate and remove all of its improvements and personal property placed on the premises as defined in the agreement on or before October 1st. And then if you go on down, it does talk about how much they spent on it and everything. It's got, like, this was the agreement that they were in, and it's a few $1,000s here. Let's see, where's it at? Okay. Yeah. So the tenant has prepaid rent for the first 12 months in the amount of $31,458 based on a rental rate of $2,621.50 per month. Okay, so that's how much they're paying. And so it's a fairly good sized parking lot and everything, but that's the rent they're paying on it. And so they have already paid. I don't know how all it's going to work. This is the legal document. So if you're a legal person, you can go ahead and look at that. I just think it's crazy. Fair enough. The judge said they could go ahead and continue their services. And so the county decides we just are going to do this. That's just really not nice. Not nice at all. It's a lot of the same tactics, it seems like, that Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago used against the churches there. Just, they don't like churches. These people do not like religion, especially Christianity. They want to get rid of them. So let's go on. How about this one? Elon Musk unveils brain chip implant. It's like a Fitbit in your skull. Yeah, it's about the size of a coin, and it goes in there, and it can supposedly, this is the purpose for it, a brain chip implant to allow people who are paralyzed to operate technology, such as smartphones or robotic limbs, with their thoughts. Okay, that's the purpose of it. But you can probably tell that it could easily be manipulated. And so it's called Neuralink, and here is an hour and a half long, or it's over an hour, I forget how long it is. Well, it's actually down here a little further. I don't know where it's at, but there was a link to it somewhere. The video, I do have the video somewhere. I'll make sure that here it is, live stream right there. And it's over an hour, though. I didn't watch all of it, but there was another one that was like a 7-minute video summary, and I watched that one. But yeah, they had these 3 pigs, and they had one pig that didn't have any, had never had this implant. They had another pig that had the implant, and then they removed it because they wanted to show how it could be removed and not cause any ill effects. And then they had the 3rd pig that actually had it, which was just kind of weird because all it did was show some noises that I guess the pig made, the impulses or what. I don't know. Anyway, I'd have to watch the whole thing, and I'm really just not going to do that at this point. But they had a machine that would actually do the robotic implantation, so it wouldn't even need a real human being there. But it's real creepy stuff, folks. Real creepy stuff. That and those helmets. Well, Barr says that we're going to be familiar with some of the names, and that when he's talking about it like this, it's getting closer and closer all the time. So, and Barr himself is hinting at action soon, saying that the people charged might be very familiar. So, yep. And he is saying Americans will be able to recognize some of the names under investigation as part of the U.S. Attorney John Durham's ongoing probe into federal surveillance abuses, and that he is very troubled by what has been called to his attention so far. And Ratcliffe is really giving the same signals that he knows there's going to be arrests. There will be. Okay? So, and that they are very, upset about what happened, the stuff that they know about. So there you go on that one. And the last thing I have for you is this thread right here, because this has to do with Mike Flynn. And you may already know by now, because I won't be able to get this out early Monday morning. So I'm not sure when it's going to get out, but this guy says he believes that there will be a decision on Flynn. Very likely that the D.C. Circuit will issue its en banc judgment and opinion on the Flynn mandamus case this upcoming Monday, August 31st, due to Judge Thomas Griffith being set to leave the court effectively September 1st. And it goes through and it gives a reason for that, because there was a judge out in the Ninth Circuit Court where he had been part of this hearing, and they were getting ready, they were preparing the decision and everything, and the guy died like 10 days before the decision was released. So it was ruled that they couldn't count him as supporting it, because judges are allowed to change their mind up to the point where that decision is released. So he might have changed his mind somewhere along the line. So this could be interesting. In this Thomas Griffith, you don't know where he's going to stand, and his opinion's not going to count. So this could be very interesting what happens there. And he just goes through and tells the legal reasons behind it and everything. So, here's the section of the code and all of this. So there you go. I'll leave that down below and you can read it for yourself. But anyway, that's what I've got for you on this one. Oh, I didn't get a little channel. Oh, sorry about that. I will get one next time. It's hard for me to remember, and then I get to the end and it's like, oh no, I forgot. So anyway, sorry about that. And I do know that there are some people that have ideas of small channels that I could give shout outs to. You need to make sure that you put like a hashtag channel with your suggestion, and then tell me why. Tell me what about that channel you like, because I want to give a little bit of information when people hear it as to why somebody said that's a good one to follow. All right, so that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later. Chart where it had 48% of the people had 3 or more comorbidities. Okay, let's get back to this. Talking about death, yes, and I'm laughing. Oh, I have a warped sense of humor. Sorry, my mouth just goes. Anyway. Okay. 48% of the people had 3 or more comorbidities. I can't do this one. Comorbidities. Comorbidities. Why am I having problems with that word tonight? 48% of the people who died in Italy had 3 or more comorbidities.